Greetings, everyone. So tonight I wanted to talk about peace after narcissistic abuse. And I'm going to talk about some of my experiences of going through narcissistic abuse, whether it was family members, so-called friends, workplaces, employers, co-workers, and share the things that I've done to create peace in my life. And by no means is everything that I've done like super perfect. You know, we're all on a learning journey and we're all doing the best that we know how to do. But I just wanted to share that once you have gone through like serious narcissistic abuse, there is life on the other side of the tunnel. So, let me see. Almost nearly 10 years ago, maybe a little less, I started noticing some things in some of my family members and also really in the general public, like as far as in general. And I knew that these behaviors were just something was wrong. Something was off. And I always, when these things were happening, I was always like felt kind of confused because what I've learned is that a narcissistic person, or if we want to just make it easy, toxic, because I'm so tired of hearing people trying to hijack that word, or worst case scenario, negating and trying to make it that it doesn't exist. But, you know, to me, what a narcissist means is just a nasty individual, a mean girl, a bully, grandiose, selfish, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me, all about me, individual. Anytime you have a person that is going out of their way to make you feel bad about yourself, to put you down, to minimize your accomplishments, to minimize who you are as a human being or a woman, that's a narcissist. That's it. Any man that has to go around, such as like some of these stories that I've been reading, the prison guards that are R-ing the women, inmates in vulnerable positions, wouldn't be surprised if they're trafficking them too in some kind of way. Anytime you're around monsters like this, you're dealing with a narcissist. And in the worst, most horrific, heinous abuse, no empathy, just off the rails. It's a psychopath. You guys can just go look that up. There's a lot of information online. Some of it's not accurate. But I feel that a lot of police stories and detective stories that you might see on Amazon Prime, Netflix, whatever we're doing now, investigative shows, you will see a lot of psychopaths. In fact, not too long ago, I really love cop shows and investigative shows. And I had watched one actually on YouTube about this. I believe he was a psychopath. He was abusing his young son so heinously that it, there's no way. He had to be one of those psychopaths. You know, kind of like Jeffrey Dahmer, whom killed all his victims and then he ate them and all these sick things. And there's more to that. I don't want to get into it, though. I believe Dahmer was found to have, like, satanic altars and stuff. But anyways, that's not an individual that has any compassion, any love, any, like, real feelings, any care for other people, any care for animals or insects or whatever it is. So, when I was younger, it was always the same thing when I was around a person that was like this, like really mean, or maybe making fun of my red hair. I got teased relentlessly. Like, it was bad. It was bad. A lot of those people, the kids that were teasing me, grew up to be narcissists. Some of them later came back and told me they were sorry for being so mean to me. I believe they were not narcissists. They were just stupid kids caught up in for whatever reason they were doing that. But, you know, it's like that old saying, like, how you treat others shows really who you are as a person. And anytime I was in these types of situations, whether it was when I was in the military, whether it was when I was in high school, around certain family members, around a really awful boss, that I believe that behind it was narcissism. And honestly, I don't even know if narcissism as the word is the greatest definition or description, because Narcissus was a man who fell in love with his image in the river or the water, and he was so enamored with his own image that he fell into the water and drowned, I believe, if I got it right. And I mean, yeah, definitely narcissism has a lot of that, but I just think there's a lot more to it. And as a young person, I would just, when I look back on it, you know, I've told you guys that I'm like a super fawner. Like, I can fawn for days. And I learned that at a young age in different scenarios. And that was my go-to, and it still is, actually. It's one of them. Flight is a good one. I often like to just leave in certain situations. And, you know, flight or fight is what you do when you know you're in danger. So it goes along with all the abusive type behaviors. And when I look back, when I was probably in my 20s, that was when, well, actually even younger than that, 17, 18, probably even 16. Like, I just knew in my heart that when a person was just being cruel to you and screaming at you, or making fun of your hair, or telling you that you're fat, or, you know, men, like, well, I had an abusive husband at the time. That was one place I learned about it. But anywhere you have someone that's doing that, you know in your heart that that's not the way someone should be treating you or other people. So what I would do is just do my best to remove myself from the situation that I could do. That was in my power. Like, maybe I really needed that job, so I would just try to like not be around a certain person or kind of ignore them and just keep my head down and do my work because I needed to get the paycheck. But I would just try to stay away. I mean, I guess when I look at it, it kind of was like a little bit of gray rocking. You know, it was just like this instinct that you have. I mean, animals have it out in the wild when you see them. When they know they're in danger and they're about to die or the predator's looking for them, there's all kinds of signs and noises that they'll do to protect themselves as well as their bird family or their bird babies or whatever it is. So I mean, there are instances in really severe abuse where all of that is stamped out. And in some of those severe abuse situations, that's when psychopaths are created. But sometimes the child does not become a psychopath, but there's so much trauma and damage to the brain, the mind, that they have serious mental health issues, serious challenges. So I guess when I look back, it was like when I realized these things, these abusive, nasty people, it's like you start to see these patterns. And with me, when I was dealing with maybe a narcissistic family member, I'm like, something's not right, They'll say like the weirdest things. Excuse me. They will say, okay, and I think Ollie Matthews used to talk about this. When it comes to a person that's healthy and caring and loving, they will say kind-hearted things to you. They will say loving things to you. But when it's a more narcissistic, toxic, abusive type person, they are going to say and do the exact opposite of a healthy, loving, kind-hearted person. And that's when you start to say, like you shake your head, like you feel really confused because you're like it's so strange that your brain can't really wrap itself around what is happening. And I think I've shared with you guys one thing that happened to me. I'll never forget this as long as I live. I was probably 17 or 18. Well, let's see, maybe 18. I was young. Because I got married when I was 17 years old, and I got divorced when I was just turned 23. And my ex-husband, okay, so when I first was with him, I thought that he was like me. And I remember telling him, I don't even remember what the story was, but it was like me really being vulnerable and sharing with him something traumatic that happened in my life. And I believe, if I remember right, some traumatic things that happened in my family, just like that was really bad. And he was just listening, looking at me intently. And now, knowing what I know about narcissists, he was collecting information to use as blackmail or something to hurt me later. And that's what happened. And one day we were having an argument, which most of the time the arguments we had really weren't really arguments. They were him berating and screaming at me. So he was saying, like, I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was something about my mother. And it was real super crazy, like what he said. And I just remember like feeling like someone had just punched me really hard in the gut. I don't know if you guys ever had that happen. I've had that happen. And it's like the air comes out and you're just like, you almost keel over because it really messes you up. And that's how I felt. And it was just like this complete shock and surprise. But you see, when these things are going on and you're right in the midst of the abuse, you're on survival mode. So you're like your survival mode, and I believe that's the amygdala, I think, that's helping you to fight, flight, all that kind of thing. And then when you're under trauma all the time, the amygdala gets like overstimulated over and over, and just a lot of bad things happen. So you are not really able to do the best logical thinking because you are right in the middle of the abuse. And sometimes you don't realize you're being abused. It's weird that happens, but it's like because you're on a constant walking on eggshells, scared, nervous, exhausted, tired, worried you're going to get hit again or whatever, that your mind can't think the right way. It can't think logically. It doesn't have good common sense. It doesn't have good logic. So that is just one memory that sticks out really, really strong to me. But it wasn't, that was when I think I was just, because of the bad situation, learning that that's not loving. That is, I deserve better. I deserve to be treated better than this. And so it's like throughout the years, because I'm a Gen Xer, throughout the years, it was just like these little things. Back then, we did not talk about narcissism at all. The only thing that you would ever talk about or hear about would be domestic violence or like various types of abusers. It's my opinion that a lot of these abusers were always the jerks going to the anger management, like super assholes. The ones always blowing up, or the ones that would like to hit their wife, which I did go through that. I might talk about it one day. I don't know. But, it's a long time ago, water under the bridge. I forgave him, and, I don't condone what he did, but I did forgive what he did. So it's like, yeah. So anyway, like, we didn't have as much information then as we do now. And a lot of women just tolerated the abuse. I think it still happens, but back then it was a lot more women would just put up with it. They still do, but like then, because of the societal mindset about a woman needs to be married, or especially if the woman's staying at home with the children, and it's this mindset, you get married, you stay married, all these things. So, but it's weird how it happened for me waking up about all these things. It's because, like, I want to believe in him. Like, I was almost 23 years old. I was 22. Got out of the military for the first time. And I just packed a few belongings and left my dog with him because, weirdly enough, the dog was safe with him. But I just left everything. I just took basic belongings. Already the divorce was like filed. And then I drove back home to my home state and started a new life. So, but again, back then we just didn't have the kinds of resources. I mean, all you would hear about was domestic abuse. And back then the cops, they didn't really help that much. I mean, I think there were probably a lot of police officers that did help, but it was very much covered up, like, because I had a sister that was badly abused, and back in the 70s. And back then the cops would just come and say, handle your family business. You know what I mean? Real crazy stuff. So, yeah, for me, I just gained knowledge like throughout the years, like you just start to realize you're like, wait a minute, I deserve to be treated in a better way than this. Like, this is not okay. And a lot of abuse is not like super like in your face. And it's the more covert abuse that really super confuses you. Especially what is a real mind F is that if a person's like really covertly abusing you, or what do they call it? Coercive. They'll throw in like really kind things to do, right? Like you might have a husband that's being really, really cruel to you. And then one day he comes home and he brings you this beautiful dress and says, try it on, babe. You know what I mean? Like, so then you're like all confused. I guess they call it cognitive dissonance. I don't know what I think about that term, but because people use it a lot, but it's really, I think they call that breadcrumbing. There's a whole lot of different things that therapists and expert, narcissist coaches and all that will say that is, but it's really super confusing. It happens a lot with parents. It's super, super confusing. Because let's just use like an abused child as an example, which I wasn't really abused. It was like a real dysfunctional home because of alcohol abuse. But, let's just use like an abused child as an example. Let's use the 70s and 80s because that's when I came up. Like you're being screamed at all the time, told that you're an idiot, that you're a moron, that can't get anything straight. And then one day your dad comes home and he like brings you a baseball glove. Like real super confusing stuff. It's like this on again, off again, on again, off again. Romance, it happens a lot. I went through that as well. Like silent treatment, then all of a sudden popping up on my door and everything's happy, real crazy. And I'll get to the peace part. But especially if you grew up in a household that was really dysfunctional, and maybe it wasn't abusive, maybe it was just like people were a little goofy, like they were a little screwed up, then you don't have a model to base things off of, so you base things off of what you learned as a child. And it might, hopefully it takes you time to learn, like, wait a minute, this is not okay. So, and then again, like I said, almost, not quite 10 years ago, but almost 10 years ago, it was like, I was dealing with this person that was doing some really super crazy things. And I'm like, what is like something weird? Like always making it a joke to me that I didn't know the day of the week. And at the time I wasn't working. I was like in between jobs. So it really wasn't like a super big deal if I knew if it was Monday or Tuesday. It wasn't a big deal. But this person kept saying this to me over and over and over. And then, which is gaslighting, by the way. And then I started to really like doubt myself. I'm like, am I going effing crazy? And like real crazy stuff. And I remember I put a calendar and I was living in a studio. I had like 3 calendars. And I still do it now. Like I mark like I did back in the day. But it's just like, so that was kind of started to lead me to know something was off. And then by then, let's see. That was probably around like 2011, 2012. We already had YouTube. So that, like, I don't know how long YouTube has been out. But once I realized what this person was doing, I'm like, oh my God, and then so I found out what gaslighting was. And then I found out what narcissism was. And I like just went freaking crazy watching video, and reading books. Don't ask me which books I read. I don't even remember. I really, I probably would remember if I looked at it or maybe bought it again. But just went like super crazy. Like I bought a book on covert narcissism, which was very, very reasonable at Amazon. And I like that one a lot because she just basically got to the point and talked about different tactics. And then so I started with this particular person and other people in my life, or people in the past in my life. I started writing down these different tactics. That's how my mind worked. Like it helped me to write it down that way. And eventually I came up with 40 or more narcissistic tactics. I wrote it down in this journal that I had. And then it just helped me to like retain it. Like, I don't know if I remember it now, but like if I jog my memory a little bit, I will. And literally like more and more tactics keep coming up every single day. So it was like, for me, it was just a way to identify the kinds of evil things that these folks do. And literally what I've learned at this point, and I probably have done narcissistic things myself, to be honest, but a lot of times you might have just an ordinary Joe or Jane, and they might have one or two, once in a blue moon, they might do something narcissistic, but their core of their being is not narcissistic. You know what I mean? So, like I always say that how you treat other people, that's who you are. I've been saying this for years. So, and then when I started reading about it, I got so paranoid. I mean, I think a lot of us go through that, and I'm like, oh my God. And as you guys know, I'm like super believer in law of attraction. I mean, I don't even know if believer is the right word. It's like, to me, law of attraction is it just is. You know what I mean? But again, it's like I had dealt with it in various family members, and I dealt with it in ex-husbands and boyfriends and just a lot of people. So, I'm like, I'm just going to stay by myself. Ollie Matthews talks about that too. He had so many good videos. I don't know how many of his old videos are up. He doesn't do it as much as he used to. But man, he had some really good ones. And like I said, the Terminator series, that was my favorite. But so, and then once I realized this particular person, which I'm not going to say who it is, I went cold as F. No contact. Like a boss. You know what happened? A few days later, I got a good job. And that job later fired me, but everything worked out the way it was supposed to. But that's usually what happens is when you change the energy around you, because you may have a parasitic energy vampire around you. If you allow this vampiric person to stay in your energy field, more situations and abuses and things that are on that energy frequency are going to happen, because that's physics. That's just the way things work. So, yeah, so I went no contact, and that's when I'm talking about like peace. Peace, man, like for real. And I'm to the point where I would rather be kind of by myself and have maybe one or two friends, or, one family member I text with or whatever. And that's cool. I'm good. Because it's always been my goal to create my own new family. You know what I'm saying? I haven't achieved this yet, but I work on it all the time. And I'm not to just keep on and on about me, but, it's easy to explain my experiences and how I deal with life. I'm far more introverted now than I've ever been. I mean, yes, I go on YouTube, but as you guys see, I don't like to be on camera all the time because I do put some videos out, but I prefer more privacy. I just feel like when it comes to speaking about populations that are disenfranchised, like especially children, I'm going to do what I got to do, right? So, anyways, aside from the whole YouTube and whatever, what has helped me in my life, and again, I'll say this again and again and again and again, I'm not perfect. Ain't nothing perfect about me, but I love who I am. I got serious challenges right now, but I love what my life is right now. It's not, there's goals, and there's intentions that I want to create in my life. But there's a lot in my life that I'm very happy with. And I would say anyone that's just learning about narcissism, or even if you're like on a continuous journey to learn about, I'll just use slash abuser slash narcissist slash toxic, whatever word you want to use. At the end of the day, they're nasty individuals on a regular basis. It's just who they are. If you can find pockets in your day of joy, if you can create peace in your environment, like for me, it's my apartment. You might own a house. Maybe for right now, you still have to stay with the abuser. Maybe your pocket of peace is going to be going out in the woods and taking a walk away from everyone. Or because you don't have the money to leave yet, or you're not ready, like psychologically, to leave the abuser, when he's not in the house, or you take a nice bubble bath by yourself. Or you put a very calm and relaxing playlist on your headphones, and that's going to be your peace. And, oh, I can't believe, did the thing go off? Oh, geez, you guys. Okay. That's so weird. I can't believe it went off. So anyways, pockets of peace. So for me, it's like I've learned through many, many years of practicing this to find my own pockets of peace. And the more that you work on it, the more peace you are going to have in your life. And a lot of us, we have to deal with crazies, right? Like you're in a situation, maybe you have clients that you have to deal with. Maybe you have your own business and there's one or two clients that for the time you've sort of got to deal with until they're, you're done with a project or whatever. But every minute of the day you have a choice whether you're going to deal with a certain individual or not. And you might have to, like I'll call this fawning. You might have to fawn just a little bit to make your life more peaceful. Like say you might have to fawn the narcissistic boss just a little bit to make your life easier. But what you're doing when you go home, you're creating a new resume. Maybe you're going to get new job skills so you can get a different job to get away from them. So, and we've all been in those situations where you're so overwhelmed. I've been in those situations so many times, it's not even funny. It unfortunately, as much as I don't like that cliche, what doesn't kill you make you stronger, there is a lot of truth to that. And I've had to be like that I feel like it's unfortunate, but that's just the way the cookie crumbled, and it's made me who I am. But the more you can try to cut out little pockets of peace throughout your day, the better you will get at it. and you will be able to create as much peace as possible. And you might have to deal with a nasty or a narcissistic boss or coworker sometimes, and they will get you stressed because that's just what they do. And in the metaphysical world, that's called lowering the vibrational frequency. I mean, unless you're in a situation where you don't have to work, and I mean, really, what are you going to do? Just stay locked up in your house all the time? You're going to run into people that are not so nice sometimes. But it's taken me, like I said, I'm a Gen Xer. It's taken me years to learn all these things. And I still don't have it completely perfect. It's not without faults. But it's just something I learn and continue to grow and try to love myself as much as I can. I've got suspicions of why I got the breast cancer, which I don't even like to say those words because that brings more energy to it. But that's where I'm at, So, taking a nice walk. I can't tell a mother how to find pockets of peace because I'm not a mother. So I'm not going to tell someone how to do that when I don't have children myself. But, for me, exercise is a huge thing. I had a hip replacement a few years ago, so I can only do what I can do, but my goals are to continue and get stronger and stronger and create a new kind of fitness as compared to what I had a few years ago, which has been very difficult for me, extremely so, because that was like such a huge part of me. I guess it's called self-regulation. Like it's just was my go-to happy place. And I've had 2 knee surgeries and a hip replacement. And I'm getting older now. But whatever little thing makes you happy. Maybe you only have 5 minutes to get away on your own. Get yourself an inspirational little book that you enjoy and read the passages in that book. Maybe listen to one of your favorite songs ever. Like, I could think one song that I really, really love by Sia, Unstoppable. I love that song. That is like such an amazing, motivational, good song, like, and that really is you raising your vibration. But if your current situation is you sort of have to be around this abusive, narcissistic person, you just have to find ways when you're, hopefully there's times where you can get away from them. And that's when you create your peace. As they really don't like you to have peace. That's like a real problem for them. They don't like you to have sleep. Oh my gosh, there's so many things where they like to hit you. But my peace and my happiness comes from nature. Nature's free. Another thing which might sound weird to some people, but thing that brings me peace, and I'm a little bit of a weirdo sometimes, I like order. I'm not perfectly ordered, but there's something weird about it. Like having things in order gives me this sense that part of it is control, but it's also like, oh wow, if I know where this thing is, it just makes me feel more relaxed. So I don't have to like be looking all over the place for it or whatever. But everybody's got their thing. So you have to find those little things that you enjoy or love and try to fit it in somewhere. Like I remember listening to Michelle Nieves, and I loved what she was talking about. So she's an artist. I'm an artist too, and I really am. I'm going to get back to my painting. But she's like an amazing painter. So one of the first things that her ex-husband, who was more coercive narcissist, covert. First thing that he did when she was married to him was completely discourage her from her painting and It was pretty awful. And reading. So there were little things that she would do to bring herself joy, like before she left him. And also Ollie Matthews, his wife was abused in the same way. She's like an amazing visual artist. And so her family, this is so sad. As a child, she was so horribly abused. An amazing, amazing visual artist, like painter. And her family would always, her mother and father would always put her down for her painting until she kind of like started to give up. But then somehow I think she won a contest or something and got like some real acclaim to it. And then the next thing you know, they were, the narcissistic parents were taking credit for it, right? So it's like you have to go back to like the things that you loved when you were a child. Like some children never got that experience. Like I think of the Scientology kids, which is just heartbreaking, and other children in cults. Go look at Children of God. There's a lot of awful, 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 awful cults. So I guess in that situation, you're going to have to find out what you love and learn what you love and fit little things like that into your life somehow. Maybe you're at like a super extremely abusive workplace. And it's like you got to do a little fawning to make the narcissistic boss happy. And when you do that, he lets you take a drive to go do some memos or whatever. Like, you know, or you say, hey, boss, do you mind if I go to blah, 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 you know, to do this, this, this. And then because you're doing a little bit of fawning, you can go do that errand or whatever and get out of the office so you don't like lose your shit. You know what I mean? I've been there. I've been there way too many times. So one thing like I like to do that's free when I'm really super stressed and what lies ahead of me is going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot. I love to color in coloring books. There's something that is so relaxing to me about that. So, you know, there's all different ways to create peace. In my perfect world, or like in my opinion, the best way to get peace away from or after narcissistic abuse is no contact. But I know it's not always possible. So maybe try to go as low contact as possible. Gray rock. And there was something else too that Dr. Ramani had spoken about. I think it's called, I don't remember how to explain it, but there's a different technique that someone that, like a friend of hers, explained to her, like firewalling. That's another way to deal with it. I forget exactly. You'd have to go look it up. But, you know, you gotta do little things of self-love. And if you're around a really narcissistic person, regardless who it is, whether it's your husband, your wife, your so-called best friend, or your boss, or your coworker, whomever it is, sometimes, unfortunately, you have to hide that from them. Because ain't nothing a narcissist hates more than to see you doing things to love yourself. I can think of an example from my life many years ago. I love to work out, but you know, I'm older now and several surgeries later. But my ex-husband did not want me to go to the gym. And he just like flew off the handle. It was nuts. And back then I was starting to fight back. I was sick of it. And he was telling me, oh, you can only be at the gym this amount of time. And I broke it. I was like, no, I'm doing what I'm going to do. And shortly thereafter, I did leave him. And I didn't have children with him, which was, you know, good at the time. So, you know, if you have the opportunity, write yourself a little list of pockets of peace or whatever you want to name the list. You know, just call it what seems right to you. And try to do those little things. In fact, there's so many books written about this. There are blogs written about this. There are so many self-care and self-love videos on YouTube about it. And there's so many things that you can do that don't cost you 1 cent to make you feel better about yourself. And the more that you do those things, you're going to create your own peace. And I hope that if you're in a situation with a really abusive, narcissistic individual, I hope for you that you can make a plan and get away from them. Because that's the best way to create peace. So I really hope that this video helps you guys. And I hope that you have an amazing night or day wherever you are. Peace.